Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. Excited for today's guest. He is a blogger, a YouTuber, podcast host of the Blogger Evolution. And what he does is he helps people create a secondary income with content niche sites. Very excited to be rocking out today with Chris Myles. Hey, Chris, are you ready to rock?
Ready to rock. How you doing, Tim? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great, and thanks for being here. So we always start off here on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business that we can be excited by.
Yeah, all right, man. I had to think about this one. So, when I first got started, it was just me and my wife, and we had okay jobs. They weren't the greatest jobs in the world, Tim, but it was more like we were making just enough to get by, and we found out that we were going to be pregnant. Well, we were pregnant with our first son, Benji. And when we found that out, my wife sat me down and she said, "Hey, I want to stay at home with him." And I was like, ugh, we can't afford that like at all. And I remember telling her, you got to have a part-time job or something. I mean, we can't just lose, 40 or so $1,000 into the house like that. But she kind of looked me into the eye and she said, you know what, Chris, you need to figure this out. I was like, ugh, I had to put on my big boy pants like really quick. And so I went online. I did what most people do, just Googled how to make money online, came across like a cesspool of stuff. But I did eventually stumble across blogging and affiliate marketing. I started with it. Can't say that it was easy, but eventually I was able to figure it out from not giving up because my back was against the wall, right? So I didn't give up. I kept pushing forward with it. Had a couple of failures, but I had some decent bigger wins. And once that happened, within about 18 months, I was able to have my wife quit her job. About a year, about maybe 6 months after that, I was able to quit my job, and that was 4 years ago. And we're still going pretty strong right now. So it's good to
Wow.
say that a nice little rinky-dink website is one of the big reasons why I'm able to stay home.
That's amazing. It is so cool to hear from you too, because I experienced similar things. I left my job 15 years ago, and looking around, I mean, blogging was right there as one of those things. Blogging affiliate websites is one of those things
Yeah.
that you could make money at, but it looked real shady for the most part.
Oh, it did. It was shady, especially back then. It's gotten a whole lot better since then. I'll give you that.
Yeah, but so yeah, it's really cool that you've managed to figure it out, which it means you probably are pretty good at inspiring other people to figure it out too, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I like to think so, because it's literally changed the entire direction of my life, right? It made everything so much better. I'm gonna be honest, and because where I was before, I didn't even realize what I was missing. I'm the kind of person that had a job since I was 15 years old, right? I've always was doing something. I always had a job, always making a little something on the side, a little bit of a serial entrepreneur too. So I had some, failures and successes there as well, but nothing really hit like blogging did. And I'm glad to say that that's what I'm able to do for a living.
Right on. So, okay, with every good note, there's some bad notes along the way too.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm wondering, like, is there something you could share with us that didn't go as planned that and how you recovered from it?
Yeah, yeah. So I remember one time, I think I was probably like 18, 19 years old, and I kind of had the bug to invest, right? And I was just thinking, I need to, I want to be able to make some money without having to super actively work on it. So I was just going through the motions, and I came across this deal where iPhones were just becoming like really, really huge. Maybe not just really huge, but they were becoming pretty big. It was like iPhone maybe three or two. It was like one of the first ones that came out, and I got to the point to where I was like, okay, so I found this overseas retailer who said, "Hey, I can get you iPhones for like $200 each," and I was like, "Oh, that's excellent," because normally an iPhone goes for around $800. So even back then, so I was like, okay, so let's do this. So I went ahead and I bought um probably 15 or 20 phones from him with the idea that I was going to get them and then put them on eBay. But I didn't have the money for it, Tim. So what I ended up doing was talking my dad into letting me invest in it. He gave me some money to go buy the phones. And I don't know, in the back of my mind, I kind of think that he knew that this probably wasn't going to work out. But he went ahead and gave me the shot with it anyways. So I get the phones and I realized that they weren't iPhones, they were M phones. And I was like, what is an M phone? You know, but when they were marketing to me, they were showing pictures of actual iPhones. So it was totally a scam. So
Yeah.
when I finally got it, I turned it on and it was just like they were just these cheap knockoffs and they were worth probably, maybe half of what I ended up paying for them. So I ended up having to just kind of cut my losses and just do what I could, right? So I ended up paying half the money back to my dad. Eventually, over the years, I gave him the money back. But what I learned from that whole process was I didn't give up, right? Because let's just say I tried that and it didn't work. What if I never tried investing in anything ever again? And at that point, I would have, kind of still been in the same spot where I am now. Once I kind of made the shift later in life, realizing that I can invest not just in things, but in myself and increasing my knowledge and so I could help more people, then that return on investment was huge for me. So I didn't let that one thing stop me. I let it just kind of shape me, if you really think about it. And from that, I was able to learn how to invest here, invest there into things, products, services, people, and being able to buy my time back and stuff like that.
Wow, that's a really, really great story. So what was the main thing that you learned out of it? Like what would you do differently if you were to do it again right now? Same scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that every other investment I've done since then has been successful, but it hasn't. So sometimes I've learned how to better vet things, right? So, I can look at it with a little bit more of a critical eye and then try to figure out whether or not it has a shot of actually working, but not to the point to where I'm paralyzed and don't do it. Right. One thing I used to think is that my dad is a pretty conservative guy when it comes to money. And, now that he's later on in life, he's set, so he knew what he was doing. My mom's a little bit more of a risk taker. She don't mind throwing a few bucks at something just to see what happens. So I like to think I'm kind of the middle of both of those. I don't mind throwing a couple bucks at something just to see what happens because usually the upside might be a lot bigger than what would happen if I just didn't invest the money at all. But I still try to be intentional, pragmatic, asking the right types of questions to make sure that I have the best chance at getting the money back. So I guess the biggest thing that I got from that experience and others is just learning the right questions to ask before jumping in full force.
Love it. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, because the thing is that there is a little amount of faith in any investment. Otherwise, it's
Correct.
probably not called an investment,
It's
right?
gambling at that point, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so yeah, I mean, the more you can sort of vet and sort of like just use your gut a little bit, maybe you might be able to figure something out. But in your case, I mean, with that first investment, it was the right move because what you learned out of it actually paid dividends over time, right? If you hadn't have
Yeah.
made that move in that first thing, then how would your life be different, right? Be very
Yeah.
different.
Right. And I mean, what if, like you said, what if I hadn't done it? It's kind of weird because I don't know where I would be right now because I don't know what other types of decisions would have spiraled from that. Maybe I still would be working a 9 to 5 right now and just going through the motions. So yeah, it is it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
I like to think about it too from your dad's perspective too, because this is probably some pretty good parenting, is my guess, right? I mean, you're probably right. He probably knew this was a scam or had a pretty good idea of it, but he gave you the money anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was my dad's a very principled guy, right? He doesn't have a long list of rules that he wants you to follow, but he wants you to just understand, okay, this is the goal. Figure everything else out from there. I remember one time, the first time that him and my mom like left me, they went on like a cruise or something. I don't know where they went. And I mean, I don't know how old I was, early teens or so, or maybe mid teens. And, I was home by myself. And I was just thinking, before they left, my dad looked me in the eye and he was like, I could give you this long list of stuff to do, son, but just take care of your business. And he left. And I was like, oh, okay. So like he understood that covered everything, So once I understood that whole process, it kind of helped me later in life to look at things from a more principled stand rather than, what's the latest thing right now and creating this long arduous list of stuff that isn't going to help anybody and it's going to be outdated in 5 minutes. If you stay principled, then it's going to, help you from here, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and on into the future.
Wow. That's really good leadership advice as well, too, right? I mean, you give
Yeah.
people their own responsibility rather than telling them exactly what to do. People feel more like they own it, right?
Yeah, and there's a trust that needs to be there because I'll tell you this: when I first started, with blogging and everything, one thing that you can do is you can outsource a lot of stuff, right? So you can outsource the writing, you can outsource the editing of your articles and things like that. But the thing is, at the end of the day, no one's going to, write your articles as well as you are as the website owner, right? So I had to learn to accept 80% as being good enough, and once I got to that point, then being able to outsource became a lot easier because I think something when it comes to entrepreneurs is, we're control freaks. We don't like to give up stuff. We don't like to give up the power and the control of some things. But the second that I realized that, I started buying back my time. Started making more money because I could produce more faster. It's a snowball effect. And once you realize that you can be the own bottleneck in your business, then you'll start to realize that you can branch off and start growing a lot faster.
Love it. Right on. So let's talk a little bit about learning from the best. So now your dad obviously was was a teacher in your life, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But what about who did you turn to? Did you go to online courses? Did you hire coaches? Like how did you learn?
Yeah, and I did it all, man. When it comes to learning, this industry, one thing that I did do is I started with YouTube University, and YouTube University works great. Just go, and when I say YouTube University, I mean just going on YouTube and finding a video
Yeah.
that talks about it. When I first started doing this blogging stuff around 2015 or so, that's all I did. I just was going on YouTube, binge watching stuff from what people's successes that they were having, and then they were explaining how they got their successes. And I found this one guy who I really liked. I think his name was the Lazy Stoner or something like that. It's pretty funny because I didn't realize it at the time that it was just good marketing on his part. That was his shtick. Was, hey, I'm just the lazy guy who smokes all the time, but I'm making all this money online. I was like, oh man, this is great. I mean, I don't smoke, and that's what I want to do. So I know I can do it. If he could do it, I know I can do it. So I
Yep.
started following his videos, and I started trying to model exactly what I was doing with what he was doing. And what I didn't realize at the time was that a lot of the things I was following was like 3 and 4 years old. And when I started doing it, I ended up not getting anything out of it. I created this whole website, took weeks to build, putting the content out there and everything. And I remember hitting publish, and I sat back and I crossed my arms and I waited and I waited and I waited, and nothing happened. And eventually the site ended up getting what's called de-indexed. It got taken out of Google because I was borrowing content without asking, and I didn't really realize that that was the
Yeah.
wrong thing to do because that's what the guy on YouTube was doing, right? So I was like, all right, so this isn't working. What happened? So after I went through that whole process, I realized that okay, maybe I need to get somebody who knows what they're doing right now. And that's when I started investing in more courses, coaches. I've had mentors before, and just by doing that, I can send them a quick text, or maybe we're in an email or something, and ask them, what should I do with this particular situation? And usually they'll just send me back like something nice and quick. Or if we're on a call or something like that, they can tell me exactly what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. That's worth so much time savings. It's ridiculous. So because of that, I was able to cut the curve of learning a lot of this stuff from maybe a 2 to 3 year venture to more of a 1.5 year venture to get everything that I was looking for when I first got started. So, definitely, coaches, mentors. I've just recently started getting more into masterminds as well with other bloggers. It's a really cool thing, but you have to invest in yourself with these things because most of these things aren't cheap, but doing it with the amount of time you're going to get back with it is worth everything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about that too. And I think that the way you went about it, though, with going to YouTube first, I think that's a pretty solid way to handle things because it helps you to figure out exactly what kind of coaching you need as well. Like
Mhm.
how do you know who to go hire from the first part? I mean, go out there, see if you can learn some stuff, get some failures, and then go, okay, now I know what question to ask when I'm going to go out there
Yeah.
and find a coach, right? Right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, a question like when I first was getting into this, I didn't really know what I didn't know, right? So I would find people online who claim to know what they're talking about and then try to decipher if it was right or not. So some things that I do nowadays is if I come across a podcast, a YouTuber, or something like that who's talking about my industry, I'll leave them a message or send them an email. If they actually respond, even if it's a VA of theirs, but still, if they respond to it, they have already gone light years further than the person who's just trying to make a couple bucks, because they're actually trying to interact with their audience. And then I
Totally.
might binge a little bit more, and then, compare it to what I already know or what I've seen from other people, what's worked for me and what hasn't worked for me. And then I can make a decision as to whether or not I trust this person and invest in their course or in their mentorship or whatever they have to offer. So I just take a little bit longer, a little more pragmatic with what I'm going about with the process. But by doing so, I've cut down severely on, choosing the wrong mentor, if that makes any sense.
Hey Rockstar, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. If you didn't know already, my business is Creative Crew Agency. We build websites. Now, let's talk about your website for a minute. Most people realize that at this day and age, we need a website, but we don't really know what the website is supposed to do. And sometimes you'll just go and build a website for the sake of building a website. What I do is I make sure that your website actually accomplishes a goal. Now, there are three main goals to most websites. Number one is to provide information and build credibility. Number two is to schedule some sort of appointment and get them onto a sales call. Number three is to sell something like an e-commerce site. Now, when you're setting your website, you have to be very mindful that the visitor doesn't know what to do. And so you have to provide them with a roadmap that leads them down a path to wherever you want them to go. On my website, I want them to be on a free consultation. So that's why when you go to creativecrewagency.com, you'll see information about scheduling a free consultation. Now, for you though, I'm going to provide you with an extra link so that you can get your free website audit. Go to creativecrewagency.com/free website audit and schedule an audit with me. And I'll go through your website live and determine what we can do to improve your conversions and make sure that you're getting the business from your website. Go to creativecrewagency.com and we'll see you there.
That's solid advice, Chris. So now what about, I mean, you mentioned that, you hit publish, nothing happened.
Oh yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, do you have any, solid tips on how to generate fans? Like, how did you go about, starting to get eyeballs on your work?
Yeah, so the main thing is called search engine optimization, or SEO. So we use, or when I say that, when I say we, I mean my business, we normally go toward what's called Google SEO. So we create content that's carefully crafted so that when people online are searching for common questions in a space, they're going to find our stuff. And we just find a particular niche to jump into that might be a little underserved on the internet. And when I say underserved, I mean, uh, and you've probably seen this before, Tim. Have you ever Googled something and then maybe you couldn't find the answer, or you're left sifting through a whole bunch of message boards trying to figure out what Sally 123 has to say about the matter? Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So when I see that kind of thing, that's opportunity for me to understand that I can create better content, more succinct content that's more helpful to somebody, and Google notices it and ranks me higher. And that's basically, I use SEO to do that. And SEO is basically like, I guess you can liken it to a library. It's kind of like a library. So, when you go to a library and you need to find a book on guitars or something, right? Then, you can use, oh, what do they call it? The Dewey Decimal System or whatever. You use that to try to figure out what section of the library it's in, what a row is going to be in, all of that fun stuff, right? Google is kind of the similar way. You create your content like that book that you're looking for, but you're using SEO to help Google figure out where that content needs to go and what audience it needs to be put in front of. All right. So hopefully I hope that made sense, but you can hone that skill and really use it for any topic online. Google has over 4 billion with a B active users every single month. There's only 8 billion people on the planet. So that's about, half the planet uses the internet and Google in order to answer common questions. So you only need a small fraction of people in order to make a decent income online. But if you position yourself as a helpful resource, you can then, on the other side of that, find a way to monetize and make some money from it.
Wow. That's probably one of the better explanations I've heard of SEO, by the
Okay.
way. So that's pretty good. But you're totally right. Because I mean, it is computers. It is AI that's going through these websites and figuring out
Yeah,
how that
exactly.
ranks, right? So really, if you can make it nice and easy for your content to find to be found and for answers to be yeah, like you say, if you're going around looking for something and you can't find it, well, there's probably a better way, right? That you can do,
Yeah,
that you can get around doing that. I love how you look at that. That's an opportunity, and it is true. If you're looking for something, then chances are someone else is looking for it. If you
yeah.
can't find it, chances are they can't find it either, right?
Oh, 100%, and at the end of the day, Google is a computer. It's an algorithm. It looks at this stuff and it makes its best guesses. But what I've found is that typically the algorithm will follow the person, right? So as long as you create content for people and not just trying to rank or not just trying to, game the system or whatever, then Google's going to eventually find it. It's going to eventually figure it out and being able to serve your content to the right people. So it's all about just putting your keywords, and when I say keywords, I mean the phrase that you're trying to rank for. So if someone Googles that phrase, your website pops up. You find the right keyword, you put it in a couple of strategic places within your article, and once that's done, at that point, you're just writing for people. And once you've done that, then you just kind of let Google take the reins. And Google is like one of the most consistent traffic sources on the planet, and it has been for 20 years now, probably, right? And it's pretty crazy how well Google works. There's multi-million dollar and probably billion-dollar companies that are built solely on how Google performs, which is kind of a cool and scary thing at the same time.
Yeah,
But
it is.
it is the case, so that's what I'm doing right now and have been doing it for the last 7-8 years or so.
Yeah, and I think that's really solid advice. I know that back when, 15 years ago when I was first looking at all this stuff, you really could game the system quite easily,
Easily,
right?
yeah.
You have these article spinners that would just basically take your keywords and just spit it out a bunch of times, and but it wasn't something that a person could really read and get anything out of. And eventually over time, Google has just gotten better and better, and that's why I know that I give people advice to not write anything too gamey, because eventually Google's going to figure that out. Google really
Yeah.
is an expert at figuring out whether this is a real person just trying to serve an audience, or if this is someone trying to game the system and create something that's going to rank high but not provide the value that it really says it's going to provide. So
Yeah.
as long as you are just real, and like you say, use a couple key hints, right?
Yeah.
Make sure when you're writing your article, and this does make sense. When you're writing your article, sometimes you'll mention the thing, the title of whatever it is that once, and then you'll say it or the or all that stuff for the rest of it, because that's how you like to write. Well, it might be useful to use it a couple times in a bunch of different places, because in Google's perspective as a computer, it wants to see that you actually are talking about the thing you say you're talking about, right?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if you remember, like e-zine articles, you used to Google stuff and like these
Yep.
terrible PDF docs will pop up and you're just like, what is this? You notice you don't really see those anymore, right? And that's because over time, Google has just gotten better at filtering out garbage content and actually letting the cream rise to the top, but nowadays, Google uses there's a thing that they have called Rank Brain, and Rank Brain is just looking at an article and trying to figure out what the article is about, and it uses something that are called like semantic keywords, and just that's a technical term, but basically what it is Google is using other terms that you use in an article to surmise what the article is about. So, for example, if I wrote an article that talks about Springfield, right? Like every state has a Springfield in the United States, right? So, you think about, I'm writing an article about Springfield. How does Google know what Springfield I'm talking about? Well, if in the rest of that article, you might see Bart or Simpson or Homer or Marge or something like that, Google can then take all of that and realize that, oh, they're talking about the fictitious town Springfield from The Simpsons, versus Springfield, Illinois, or something like that. So being able to use contextual words that also frame what it is you're talking about helps give Google more information as to what your article is about. And once Google knows what you're all about, then they know exactly where to put your content. And hopefully you've, working in a way to where your content can be found by your ideal audience. Blogging works for pretty much anybody as long as you're audience uses Google. If your audience uses Google, then blogging can work for you, you know? So it's one of those, it's, you know, one of the greatest, you know, things that I think it's just changed the world. It really has, you know, and because of that, I'm able to try to take advantage of that by creating good, helpful content for those audiences.
Love it. So now leads right into the next topic, which is practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
How do you get good at doing something like that? Right? How do you keep it moving?
Yeah, there's a bit of immersiveness that you need to have because the game of SEO is always changing, and you do need to kind of have a little bit of a competitive spirit, right? If like I've noticed that a lot of successful bloggers sometimes were professionals in their prior careers, maybe a lawyer or maybe even doctors. You know, that's just what they've done in the past because they've learned how to organize a lot of information and convey it in a way to where, you know, it can be understood. And I'm not saying that you need to be that because I'm by far nowhere close to being a lawyer or a doctor, but you just need to be able to see what other people are doing and then adjust accordingly. Google has these updates that come out every now and then, and sometimes that can hurt your traffic on your website. And I like to look at those situations as, oh, that's just Google testing you to see if you really want to be around, right? So usually what you can do is, you know, if you might get hit by an algorithm update, everyone will probably at some point, even if you do everything 100% above board, you still might get hit with one. But I've seen so many instances where as long as you just keep trekking, keep going with it, then your traffic can sometimes double or triple what it used to be because Google now has a better understanding at what it's doing. So once you look at these updates as a positive thing that is trying to make the internet better, then usually you can do much better with it. So I stay on top of things, listen to podcasts, you know, YouTubers, coaches, and mentors who are also blogging. Like I mentioned before, in a few masterminds, so I'm able to see what other people are doing that's working and then tailoring it to my sites. That's really probably the best ways to do it. But if you're just getting started, I would say the best thing is just pick a couple of podcasts to listen to. There's some really great ones out there, and just find one that you like that's still continuing to create content even today so that you can get the latest and greatest and then go from there.
Love it. Yeah, there's a couple of really good ones I heard about. I think there's one Work at Home Rockstar, and there's also a Blogger Evolution podcast that are pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean these are top of the line type podcasts that you need to listen to like right now. Oh, you are listening to one right now. So as soon as you're done here, Blogger Revolution podcast, that's where I am.
Absolutely. Right on. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I think nowadays it's just so much easier to find really good content and really good help out there, right? And everybody's
Oh yeah.
I mean, let's just look at how Google works. Google, we just spend a whole time talking about how Google tries to figure out how to best serve somebody with content and with information. So as long as you're
Exactly.
out there providing that good information, you're going to get people coming to you. And number two, if you're looking for good content, you're going to be able to find it.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of the OGs of, you know, this SEO game, and you know, back when they started back in like the mid 2000s and stuff, right? Like, you know, 2005, 2006, and how building websites and stuff used to be back then. Like you had to be, you know, close to a rocket scientist to understand some of those things in order to create, you know, the code and HTML to get your sites up and running. Nowadays, literally couple presses of a button and you can have a website up and running that's live on the internet.
Yep.
It doesn't take much. But even then, there's still, you know, I like to call it a prove it period that Google kind of puts you through because they want to see if you really want to be there. That's the way that I look at it. And as long as you're creating content and you just continue mowing through, and you know the Google gods decide to finally send you some traffic, usually it becomes a snowball and your business blows up.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, my background is in computer science. I have a degree in computer science, and I remember when websites were coming out back then. Yeah, I mean, I never even considered starting a business building websites until much later because I just assumed it was really difficult because I
Yeah,
knew it was back then. I'm like, I don't want to get into that. I don't, I want to do something cool if I'm going to do programming. And then later on, things have gotten so much simpler now. Now, all these drag and drop things. Yeah. I mean, I still build
yeah,
websites now, but I don't even call it coding. When people are like, "Oh, I need a programmer." Yeah, I don't really do programming anymore.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
little bit of it here and there, depending on how complicated the site is. But especially if you're building a blog, I mean, really that doesn't need to look amazing, and it doesn't have to have
No,
crazy functionality. Really, when people are looking online on Google, they just want their question answered. So it doesn't matter what it
100%.
looks like, right?
Yeah, no, I teach and coach a few people on this blogging stuff, and almost every time, someone will come across and, hey, Chris, check out my website. I moved, my logo from here to the middle. What do you think? It's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the content is what's going to draw people. You can have the ugliest website. I think now, I don't promote them or anything, but I use them as an example. But the drudgereport.com, I think is the website. That's
Okay.
one of the plainest, ugliest looking websites on the internet. But I think they get like 500,000 people a month are looking at their stuff, if not more, probably. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your website looks like. Just get something up there and start creating the content. You can create the greatest, best looking website in the world, but if it's in the middle of the desert and no one knows it's there, then what's the difference? So it's all about creating traffic to your website, and you do that by creating great content.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. And I suppose it depends, just to make it a caveat here, it depends on what the goal of your website is. If the goal of your
True.
website is good content, doesn't matter what it looks like. If the goal of your website is to create credibility for maybe you're a lawyer, I don't know, as you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, well, okay, fine, it have to look good, right? But
Yeah.
if you're just doing it for content, it doesn't have to look good.
Yeah, I mean, when I start niche sites, and maybe I should clarify a little bit, I'm usually doing hobbies. Like I have a golf website. I have a website that talks about water filters. I have a website that talks about oil filters. Actually, yeah, I just acquired that. So we just talk about these random little things that people are just, they're working on something. Man, how do I fix this? Quick Google search, my website pops up, and that's really what the whole idea of it is. And once I get that audience onto my site, as you mentioned, it doesn't really matter what the site looks like as long as it answers the question. But if I was trying to develop leads, capture email addresses, and create campaigns and all of that fun stuff, then yeah, it would need to be a little bit more professional looking, because at that point I'm trying to sell a brand to somebody and hopefully they invest or whatever. So it really just depends what the whole goal is. But if you're just building niche sites, you can go pretty plain Jane and you can do really well just by getting traffic and income to the site.
Yep. And I would argue that the content websites are the ones that are going to perform better for you than any other type of website you're going to build. In fact, actually, when I help someone to build a brand website, I'm always trying to convince them to add a component of it that has something to do with content. Content is key right now. That's what people are looking for. I mean,
Yeah.
a good looking website is not going to rank high in Google if it has no content on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, 8 years ago, you could write one article on one thing and have a good shot at ranking for it. Nowadays, there's this thing called topical authority, where Google wants to see that you're covering almost a topic at almost every single angle, just so that they can see you as an authority in that space. Once that's the case, and they've understood that, then they know who to put your content in front of. So it makes a huge, huge difference nowadays. And in my opinion, I think that's better, right? Because now I don't have to worry about, the random guy who just creates an article just so he can make some affiliate commissions. I'm going to lose out to a site. I'm going to lose out to a site that's just is doing better content than me, that's doing it better at scale and everything, at which point I run somewhere else where someone else didn't put as much time and effort into their content, so I can beat them out. So it just depends on what your goal is, what you're trying to do, and what you're trying to accomplish with your sites.
Love it. So I'm inspired. I'm inspired to do some blogging right now. But tell
Hey.
me, it's your guest solo. So tell me what's exciting in your business then.
Yeah, so right now I've been blogging for a while, and what we started doing probably 2 years ago is started coaching people on how to do it as well. So it's been nice to have some people come through and have some real successes with their website. I have one girl in particular in Ireland. She used to teach kids English online. She now is doing this pretty much full time, I believe, doing the blogging thing. And she was this close to giving up before me and her ran into each other, which is really cool that, she went from there to, where she is right now with the whole process. So, being able to help others do it, it's kind of past a money thing at this point. It's more of an impact of knowing how this changed my life and being able to have it change other people's lives as well, because it's a great I love it. It's a great industry to be in. I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff, and I love doing it to be able to help other people as well.
Right on. Well, yeah, it feels good. You've got purpose, right? You're actually helping
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. And being able to help people and see them make their first commissions online or their first, couple bucks online. I think the first money I made online was probably maybe like $1.50 or something. Like it wasn't anything to write home about, but you think about when you go to like a diner or something and someone has their dollar just posted on the wall or whatever, that's a monumental feat. And when you create a website that it wasn't in existence before, now it is, and it's generating money, that's a mind-blowing thing to me, and at that point you just gotta, all right, how do I make more of this?
Yeah, love it. Right on. So how do we find out more about you then?
Yeah, so definitely check out the Blogger Evolution podcast. Just be sure to please subscribe, check it out. It's a great podcast. I'm a little biased, but then also I have a free training that will show you how to pick your niche, and it's very simple. Go to bloggerevolution.com/crash course. So go there, you'll be able to choose a niche. That's probably one of the hardest things that people need to go through when it comes to building up their websites, is choosing a good niche that's going to make them money that they're not going to waste their time with. So going through that little mini course right there is going to help you do that, and hopefully, move on to the next step of actually starting to build your site.
Love it. Right on. Blogger Evolution. This is really cool. So I hope you guys go check it out. Thank you so much for rocking out with me today, Chris. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tim. I appreciate it.
And to the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, comment, and we'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.